Rainy days and broken dreams. The rain hammered against the flimsy umbrella as Tom hurried Lily down Elm Street. Puddles, reflecting the gray sky, threatened to swallow her small, brightly colored boots. Almost there, squirt, he said, his breath misting in the chilly air. He juggled the umbrella, her lunchbox, and his own coffee, nearly dropping everything when a gust of wind ripped at the fabric above them. Lily giggled, clutching his hand tighter. "You're like a clown, Daddy. A rainy day clown." He grinned back, relieved. Her laughter was a small spark against the gloom that always seemed to settle on him these days. "Just trying to keep my best girl dry." He deposited her at the school doors, offering a quick hug and a promise to see her later. "Be good for Miss Davison." The diner was already buzzing when he arrived, the smell of frying bacon and stale coffee thick in the air. Mr. Henderson, the owner, was barking orders, his face flushed. "You're late, Harding. Table 4 wants their check and Mrs. Gable is complaining about her toast." "Again." Tom mumbled an apology, grabbing an apron from the back. The next 6 hours were a blur of spilled coffee, demanding customers, and greasy burgers. He moved on autopilot, clearing tables, refilling drinks, and trying to ignore the gnawing emptiness in his stomach. The tips were meager, barely enough to cover the rising cost of, well, everything. He glanced at the crumpled bills in his pocket, a familiar wave of anxiety washing over him. Rent was due next week, and Lily needed new shoes. The rain hadn't let up by the time he finished his shift. The sky was a bruised purple as he trudged towards his beat-up pickup. He'd promised Lily they'd watch a movie tonight, a small treat to break up the monotony. He was a few miles out of town when he saw it, a sleek, silver Mustang pulled over on the side of the road, hazard lights blinking forlornly. A woman stood beside it, her arms crossed, a frown etched on her face. She was dressed in an expensive-looking suit, completely out of place on this desolate stretch of highway. Tom hesitated. He was already running late and fixing cars wasn't exactly his forte. But the rain was coming down harder now and she looked utterly miserable. He pulled over, the gravel crunching under his tires. "Everything all right?" he asked, rolling down his window. The woman turned, her expression guarded. She had sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to assess him in an instant. "Does it look all right?" "The car won't start." Her voice was cool, bordering on dismissive. Tom climbed out, offering a small, apologetic smile. He ran a hand through his already damp hair. "Maybe I can take a look. I'm no mechanic, but I know my way around an engine, sort of." She raised an eyebrow, her skepticism palpable. "I doubt it. I've already called roadside assistance, but they said it would be at least an hour." She glanced at her watch, a flash of gold in the fading light. "I have a very important meeting." Tom ignored her tone, popping the hood of the Mustang. He peered inside, the rain dripping down his neck. He recognized the problem almost immediately, a loose connection on the distributor cap. Something so small, so easily fixed. "Might be this," he said, pointing to the wire. "Looks like it came loose." He rummaged in his toolbox, pulling out a pair of pliers. The woman watched him, her arms still crossed, a mixture of impatience and something akin to curiosity in her eyes. "A helping hand." "Sounds like she's coughing up a lung," Tom said, peering under the hood of Eleanor's Mustang. The engine, a snarling beast just moments ago, now sputtered weakly, threatening to die. Eleanor stood beside him, arms crossed, her expensive coat a stark contrast to the gritty surroundings of Tom's modest home. He straightened, wiping grease on a rag he pulled from his back pocket. "Fuel pump, I reckon. Common issue with these older models." He glanced at Eleanor. "You got any experience under the hood?" Eleanor's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly. "I can manage the corporate budget for a Fortune 500 company, but carburetors are outside my area of expertise." Tom chuckled, a warm, genuine sound that eased some of the tension he felt. "Well, budgets and carburetors, different beasts entirely. I can probably get her running again. Got a spare pump in the garage, probably fits. Might take an hour or two." He hesitated. "Unless you'd rather call a tow truck." Eleanor considered this. A tow truck would be faster, easier. But there was something about Tom's offer, a simple kindness, that she found unexpectedly appealing. "If you're sure it wouldn't be too much trouble, I'd appreciate it." "No trouble at all," Tom said, already heading towards the cluttered garage. "Lily, honey, why don't you keep Miss Sterling company? Maybe show her your rock collection." Lily, who had been watching from the porch swing, bounced up. "Okay, Daddy." "Miss Sterling, do you like shiny things?" Eleanor followed Lily to the porch, a faint smile playing on her lips. The girl's enthusiasm was infectious. "I do enjoy shiny things, Lily." As Tom wrestled with the fuel pump, Lily chattered about her prized collection of geodes and quartz crystals. Eleanor, surprised by her own interest, found herself asking questions, genuinely curious about the girl's passion. She spoke of the pressure of her job, the constant ethical tightropes she had to walk. "It's like," Lily said, carefully arranging her crystals, "you have to find the sparkly bits hidden in the mud." Eleanor paused, struck by the simple analogy. "I suppose that's true." An hour later, Tom emerged from the garage, wiping his hands with another rag, a triumphant grin on his face. "She's purring like a kitten now. Just needs a test drive." He tossed the rag aside. "Lily, you want to come for a spin?" Lily whooped with delight and hopped into the back seat of the Mustang. Tom slid behind the wheel and Eleanor took the passenger seat. As they drove down the winding country road, the Mustang humming smoothly, Eleanor felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. The wind whipped through her hair, carrying away the weight of board meetings and shareholder demands. Maybe, just maybe, there were still sparkly bits to be found even in the mud. The fuel pump dilemma. The fuel pump sat heavy in Tom's hands, the metallic tang of it filling his nostrils. He'd managed to wrestle the old one out without completely mangling the fuel lines, a small victory he desperately needed. Now, all that stood between him and getting the Mustang back on the road was money. He reached for his wallet, a worn leather bifold Lily had given him for Father's Day 3 years ago. He peeled open the Velcro closure, the ripping sound oddly loud in the quiet garage. He counted the bills. 120, 3 fives, a smattering of singles. $38. He glanced at the invoice tucked under the fuel pump box, $62.50. A wave of nausea washed over him. $24.50. It might as well have been $1 million. Lily skipped into the garage, a handful of dandelions clutched in her fist. "Daddy, look. I made you a sunshine bouquet." She held them out, their yellow heads bobbing. He forced a smile, accepting the offering. "They're beautiful, sweetie. Just what I needed." He ruffled her hair, trying to hide the knot in his stomach. He couldn't let her see him sweat. "Is the car fixed?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "Almost. Just need to run an errand." He hated lying to her, even a little white one. He knew what he had to do. He walked to the back of the garage, grabbing his keys and his work jacket. "Lily Bug, stay here a minute. I need to pop down to the shop. Be right back." "Okay, Daddy," she chirped, already arranging her dandelions in an empty soda can on his workbench. The fluorescent lights of the garage office hummed overhead as Tom stood before Mr. Henderson's desk. Henderson, a man whose face seemed permanently etched with disapproval, barely looked up from his paperwork. "Got a problem, Harding?" he grunted. "Well, sir, I was wondering if I could get a small advance on my paycheck." Tom shifted his weight, the worn soles of his boots scuffing against the linoleum. "Just $25. I'll work it off, no problem." Henderson finally looked up, his gaze piercing. "Advance? Harding, you know the policy. No advances." "I know, sir, but it's kind of an emergency. My car's down and I needed to get Lily to school and back." Tom swallowed, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. Henderson sighed, a theatrical sound that suggested he was deeply inconvenienced. "Harding, I run a business, not a charity. If I gave everyone an advance every time they had a little emergency, I'd be bankrupt by Tuesday. Policy is policy." He returned to his paperwork, dismissing Tom with a flick of his wrist. "Now get back to work." Tom stood there for a moment, the hum of the lights amplifying in his ears. He mumbled a quiet, "Yes, sir," and turned to leave, the weight in his stomach heavier than ever. He walked back to the garage, the setting sun casting long, skeletal shadows. What was he going to do? Lily needed to get to school. He needed to get to work. And the Mustang sat, a metal shell of broken promises, waiting for a fuel pump he couldn't afford. Lily's bright idea. Tom scrubbed furiously at a patch of grease clinging to the underside of the sink, the metallic tang of cleaner stinging his nostrils. He could feel Lily watching him from the kitchen table, her usual chatter absent. He knew she sensed it, the heavy weight of worry pressing down on him. The fuel pump for the truck was shot, and without it he couldn't get to the lumber yard, couldn't make any money. He needed that truck. He straightened up, wincing as his back protested. Forced a smile. "Everything okay, Squirt?" Lily chewed on her lip, a habit she had when she was thinking hard. "You look wrinkly." He chuckled, a sound that felt hollow even to his own ears. "Wrinkly? Thanks, kiddo. I'm just thinking about how to get that old truck running again." She pushed her plate of half-eaten toast away. Maybe we could sell some stuff?" Tom raised an eyebrow, wiping his hands on a rag. "Sell what stuff, sweetie? We don't have much to spare." Lily's eyes lit up, a spark of her usual optimism igniting within her. "My toys. I don't play with all of them anymore. We could have a yard sale." She bounced in her seat, the idea clearly gaining momentum. Mrs. Gable down the street has one every summer. We could put up signs and everything. Tom hesitated. He hated the thought of parting with any of her things, even the chipped dolls and faded stuffed animals. Each one held a memory, a piece of their shared history. But he saw the earnest hope in her eyes, the genuine desire to help. He couldn't dismiss it. That's actually a pretty good idea, Lilybug. The yard sale took shape quickly. Lily, fueled by boundless energy, sorted through her belongings with surprising ruthlessness. Tom, meanwhile, rummaged through the garage, unearthing forgotten tools and dusty knickknacks. The sun beat down, turning the driveway into a sweltering stage for their humble enterprise. A black town car idled discreetly across the street, partially obscured by the branches of an ancient oak. Inside, Eleanor Sterling watched the scene unfold with a detached curiosity. She'd been driving past, heading to the clinic for her weekly physical therapy when she noticed the makeshift signs flapping in the breeze. Yard sale, they proclaimed in Lily's exuberant, slightly uneven handwriting. She saw Tom, his brow furrowed in concentration as he wrestled with a tangled extension cord. Lily flitted around him, her bright pink T-shirt a splash of color against the faded backdrop of their modest home. Eleanor found herself oddly captivated by their efforts. The determined set of Tom's jaw, Lily's unwavering enthusiasm, it was a stark contrast to the sterile, calculated world she usually inhabited. She watched as a young couple, probably college students, examined a box of old records. Tom, ever the charmer, engaged them in conversation, his easy smile radiating genuine warmth. Lily, perched on an overturned bucket, meticulously arranged a collection of plastic ponies. Eleanor leaned back in her seat, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. There was a certain resilience in their struggle, a quiet dignity that resonated with her. It was a resourcefulness born not of privilege, but of necessity. A quality she respected, perhaps even envied. She signaled her driver, and the car glided silently away, leaving the yard sale and its determined participants behind. But the image of the father and daughter working together under the summer sun lingered in her mind. Yard sale success. The sun had barely kissed the horizon when Tom and Lily wrestled the first folding table onto the dew-kissed lawn. Lily, a wisp of a girl but surprisingly strong, snapped it open with a decisive click, her smile reflecting the nascent sunlight. "Ready to rake it in, Papa?" Tom chuckled, pushing the sleep from his eyes with the heels of his hands. "Born ready, kiddo." He started unloading boxes, each a Pandora's box of forgotten relics, dormant power tools, his mother's mismatched china gathering dust, and a trove of vinyl records echoing with forgotten melodies. Lily's contribution, a rainbow riot of her beloved toys, was artfully arranged on a flamboyant pink throw. By 9, the front yard throbbed with activity. A small horde of neighborhood children descended upon Lily's toy display, eyes gleaming with avarice. Tom, meanwhile, bantered jovially with a prospective buyer over a dilapidated socket set, the comforting aroma of thermos coffee drifting on the breeze. Lily, a pint-sized entrepreneur, possessed an uncanny knack for sales. "Captain Calico needs a loving home," she declared, brandishing a slightly moth-eaten plush feline. A young mother with a toddler offered a clutch of crumpled bills in exchange. Across the street, partially veiled by the leafy canopy of an ancient oak, stood Eleanor Sterling. She observed the lively vignette, a pensive look etching itself on her face. The palpable joy that emanated from Tom and Lily felt worlds away from the sterile conference rooms she usually frequented. Lily bounced over to Tom, her small hands overflowing with her hard-earned cash. "Papa, I think we have enough," she shrieked, her eyes sparkling like freshly polished gemstones. "Enough for the fuel pump?" Tom tousled her hair, a wave of paternal warmth enveloping him. "Let's tally it up, partner." They spread the bills across the table, meticulously organizing the denominations. It was a near thing, but with Lily's youthful earnings and Tom's meager savings combined, they'd cleared the mark. A surge of hope coursed through him, followed by the unwelcome prickle of doubt. What if he bungled the repair? What if the fuel pump wasn't the actual culprit? Ignoring the gremlins of apprehension, Tom steered his truck toward the auto parts store, Lily's effervescent chatter filling the cabin. Back in his driveway, Tom arrayed his tools, a dog-eared repair manual spread open like a sacred text. He labored with unwavering focus, Lily his diligent apprentice, passing him wrenches and sockets with surprising proficiency. Hours evaporated, leaving Tom grimy and weary, but the Mustang roared to life at the first turn of the key. Relief crashed over him, nearly buckling his knees. He gazed at Lily, her face radiant with pride. "We fixed it, Papa," she crowed, wrapping him in a celebratory hug. He glanced at his watch. 2:30 p.m. Eleanor's appointment was at 4. He had just enough time. The CEO's secret. The cherry-red Mustang, a defiant splash of color against the gray morning, purred as Eleanor steered it into the underground parking garage. Above, Sterling Enterprises headquarters pierced the sky, a monument to her family's legacy, a legacy she suddenly felt ill-equipped to manage. She killed the engine, the silence amplifying the sudden tremor in her hands. She watched, unnoticed, as Tom, her mechanic, walked in with Lily. They were laughing, Lily's hand tucked into the crook of his arm. An unfamiliar pang, sharp and unwelcome, twisted in Eleanor's chest. Envy? For their easy camaraderie, their uncomplicated connection? She pushed the thought away, a queen dismissing a bothersome peasant. By the time she reached the executive floor, Eleanor had morphed into Miss Sterling. The transformation was subtle, a straightening of the spine, a hardening of the gaze. The tailored power suit, a far cry from her usual jeans and t-shirt, completed the illusion. The boardroom was a sterile expanse of polished mahogany and hushed expectation. Mr. Thompson, a man whose jowls seemed permanently set in a frown of disapproval, cleared his throat. Miss Sterling, he acknowledged, his tone barely concealing his disdain. He saw her as a dilettante, a young woman playing at business. He would soon learn otherwise. The meeting commenced, a tedious drone of quarterly reports and projected earnings. Eleanor listened, her face an impassive mask, as Thompson presented his proposed restructuring. It was a euphemism for mass layoffs, benefits cuts, and a general squeezing of the workforce to inflate the bottom line. These measures are drastic, Mr. Thompson, Eleanor finally interjected, her voice deceptively calm. Necessary, Miss Sterling, he countered, his eyes glinting with predatory zeal. We must prioritize profitability. Sentimentality has no place in business. These individuals are expendable. He gestured dismissively at a graph depicting employee satisfaction levels, a graph currently plummeting towards the red. Expendable. Eleanor repeated, her voice hardening. These individuals, as you call them, are the backbone of this company. Their dedication, their hard work is what built Sterling Enterprises. We're not talking about numbers on a spreadsheet, Mr. Thompson. We're talking about people's lives. Thompson scoffed. Sentiment, Miss Sterling. Pure sentiment. We have a fiduciary duty to our shareholders. We need to demonstrate growth even if it means making sacrifices. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Frankly, I doubt you fully grasped the complexities involved. Eleanor met his gaze, her own unwavering. The tremor in her hands was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. Perhaps, she said, her voice low but laced with steel, it is you, Mr. Thompson, who doesn't grasp the full picture. The battle lines were drawn. The old guard versus the new. And Eleanor, she with her vast resources, had been hoarding them, clinging to them like a miser to gold. Her company, Sterling Automotive, was poised to swallow Harding's garage whole, a necessary, albeit ruthless, step in her expansion plan. Except, the image of Tom's hopeful eyes, when he talked about his grandfather's tools, kept flickering in her consciousness. Could she really crush that? A sigh escaped her lips, fogging the window pane. The weight of her decision pressed down, heavier than any balance sheet. This wasn't just about business, it was about people. Good people. People who had shown her unexpected grace when she was stranded and vulnerable. People she had, in a way, deceived. She glanced at the intricate clock on the mantelpiece, a relic from her grandmother's collection. Time was ticking, and she couldn't delay any longer. The board expected a decision tomorrow. But the thought of rubber-stamping the acquisition, knowing the potential devastation it would wreak on Tom and Lily's lives, felt unbearable. A sudden resolve hardened within her. She wouldn't hide behind her power or her wealth any longer. She would face them honestly and openly. Grabbing her keys, she walked out the door, the scent of jasmine from the garden clinging to her coat. The drive to Harding's garage felt longer than before. The familiar landmarks seemed to mock her with their ordinariness. A flickering street lamp cast long, dancing shadows on the road, adding to the uneasy feeling churning in her stomach. She gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white. As she pulled up to the garage, she saw a light on in the small house next door. Hesitantly, she climbed out of the car. The air smelled of oil and exhaust fumes, a comforting scent she'd grown accustomed to over the past few days. Swallowing her nervousness, she walked towards the house, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. It was time to reveal the truth. Time to face the consequences of her actions. She raised her hand to knock, took a deep breath, and closed her eyes, then knocked firmly on the door. An offer of a lifetime. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garage floor, painting Lily's upturned face in stripes of gold as she diligently wiped grease from a wrench. Tom watched her, a familiar pang of guilt twisting in his gut. He should be out there, hustling for another job, not letting her spend her summer breathing in fumes. The throat cleared. Eleanor Sterling stood just inside the doorway, the setting sun haloing her head. She looked different somehow, less severe. "Mr. Harding," she said, her voice softer than he remembered. "And Lily, isn't it?" Tom straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. "Ms. Sterling, everything all right with the Mustang?" Eleanor stepped further into the garage, her gaze sweeping over the organized chaos. "The Mustang is running beautifully. Thank you again. But I came for something else entirely. I've been observing you, Mr. Harding, and Lily." Tom shifted uncomfortably. He couldn't shake the feeling he was being assessed. "Observing?" Eleanor offered a small, almost shy smile. "Let me be frank. I haven't exactly been forthcoming. My name is Eleanor Sterling, but I'm also the CEO of Sterling Enterprises." Tom's jaw dropped. Sterling Enterprises? The name was practically synonymous with innovation and wealth. He glanced at Lily, who merely raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "I've come to offer you a job, Mr. Harding. A rather significant one." Eleanor paused, her eyes locking with Tom's. "I'm looking for a head mechanic for my personal fleet. Someone with your ingenuity and dedication." Tom stared, speechless. Head mechanic? For Sterling Enterprises? It was beyond anything he'd ever dreamed of. He pictured a decent apartment, Lily in new clothes, maybe even a vacation. But then the familiar knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. "Miss Sterling, Eleanor, I'm flattered. More than flattered. But Lily, I can't just leave her." He gestured vaguely towards his daughter. "I don't have anyone who can watch her." Lily, who had been listening intently, piped up. "I can take care of myself, Dad. And Mrs. Peterson next door said she'd be happy to help if I need anything." Eleanor's eyes softened as she looked at Lily. "The position comes with housing, Mr. Harding. On the Sterling estate. There are excellent schools nearby, and Lily would have access to resources and opportunities one can only imagine she's currently lacking." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Think of it as an offer of a lifetime. For both of you." Tom looked from Eleanor to Lily, his mind racing. A decent salary, a secure future for his daughter, a chance to finally escape the endless cycle of barely scraping by. But leaving the familiarity of his tiny garage, the comfort of his routine, it was terrifying. He began, then stopped, swallowing hard. He looked at Lily again, her eyes shining with hope. He couldn't let her down. He wouldn't. "All right, Miss Sterling, Eleanor. I accept. New beginnings. I accept," Tom managed, his voice thick with emotion. Relief surged through him, a potent wave that threatened to buckle his knees. He steadied himself, grasping the cool, polished edge of Eleanor's desk, his fingers trembling slightly. A genuine smile illuminated Eleanor's face, crinkling the corners of her eyes. "Wonderful, Tom. I'm confident you'll prove to be a tremendous addition." She slid a substantial envelope across the desk. "This contains the contract, naturally, and some initial accommodation funds." Tom's brow furrowed with puzzlement as he opened the envelope, his breath hitching in his throat. The relocation sum dwarfed his previous year's earnings. I'm at a loss. Consider it a show of faith, Tom, and a testament to your inherent value." Eleanor leaned back in her chair, her gaze steady. "Sterling Enterprises cherishes its employees. I trust you'll prove a worthwhile investment." He would. Absolutely. He'd dedicate himself like never before. For Lily. The following weeks blurred into a hectic montage of paperwork, hurried packing, and farewells to the few friendly faces at the garage. He explained the opportunity to Lily, tailoring the explanation to her understanding. Her eyes sparkled at the prospect of a new home, complete with a yard and perhaps even a swing. The residence exceeded their wildest expectations. Not opulent, but a charming two-story dwelling boasting a fenced backyard teeming with late summer color. Lily squealed with glee, dashing through the rooms and immediately laying claim to the one with the inviting window seat. One sun-drenched afternoon, a week after settling in, Eleanor arrived, not in a sleek limousine, but in an unassuming sedan. She carried a wicker basket, her smile as radiant as the sunflowers nodding in their new garden. "I thought we could celebrate," she declared, unfurling a blanket beneath the sheltering canopy of a venerable oak. Lily, initially reticent, soon prattled on, eagerly displaying her collection of painted stones and the elaborate fairy dwellings she'd constructed beneath the rose bushes. Tom observed them, a profound sense of contentment, dormant for years, washing over him. Eleanor laughed freely at Lily's tales, her eyes sparkling with amusement. It struck him with sudden clarity that Eleanor was more than just an employer. She was evolving into a friend to them both. As twilight descended, painting the sky in vibrant shades of apricot and lavender, Eleanor gathered the remnants of their picnic. "Thank you," Tom murmured, his gratitude heartfelt. "For everything." Eleanor gave his hand a gentle squeeze. "The pleasure is all mine, Tom. You and Lily have reminded me of the importance of connection, of appreciating the goodness around us." She paused, her gaze softening as she watched Lily chasing fireflies in the gathering gloom. "Never extinguish that spark, Lilybug. It's a rare and invaluable gift." As Eleanor departed, Tom wrapped his arm around Lily, drawing her close. Fresh starts. It was more profound than just a different job, a different house. It was a renewed existence. An existence brimming with anticipation, fellowship, and the promise of a luminous future.